Hey everyone, my name is Catherine Korostoff. I'm with Research Rockstar, and I'd like to continue a conversation I've been having with a lot of folks over the last few weeks on these Friday conversations. And today I'd like to talk about a topic that relates to something we discussed a few weeks ago, which was about data fluency and how we make sure that we're really being data agnostic. That is, for those of us who are in market research and customer insights, we're often in situations where a client is coming to us with a very specific objective business decision, very specific application that they're looking for our help with. And it can be really hard sometimes to be truly objective in how we choose which of the so many options that are available to recommend for any given need these days. So one of the things that I've been doing with some of our classes here at Research Rockstar is I've been using a very simple framework that I created that is really is really sort of helping to make sure that we take that pause to really think about what all of the methodology options are for any given business need so that we really do objectively recommend the best one and don't just default to things that we might personally just be a little bit more used to. So this is the framework, and I will post a link to the PDF in the notes for this video as well for those of you who are here on YouTube. And what I'd like to do is I'd just like to kind of walk through it a little bit with you because the thing that's important about this framework is it really is just a conversation starter, right? It's not going to cover every possible situation where you need to make recommendations. It's really meant to more provide a structured way to think about how we make that connection. So if you look at the top, we specify this as a goal-centric framework, right? Because we do always want to make sure that we're starting with the goal. And what we see then in the next row is a set of questions. These are sort of common questions we get when we work in market research and customer insights. Some really classic types of questions we get, like what's the next big flavor? What's the next popular thing? How do we optimize a specific product? How do we boost sales of this lackluster product? How do we do market segmentation? There are a lot of different questions people have. So this is just almost random set of sample questions. But what I'd really rather do, rather than focus on the questions, I want to point out that it's really, the process is really thinking about how do I get from the questions that I need to answer for my client to recommending a methodology. And that's what I want to talk about today, which is if we think about most of the questions and objectives that people come to us with, the specific things they're trying to accomplish. I'm trying to figure out how to optimize this part of my marketing process or optimize this part of our product development process, whatever it is. It can actually usually be defined into 4 different categories. If you really take a look at a lot of the things people come to us with, it's either something where our research goal is going to have to be about discovery. We're going to have to discover customer attitudes or behaviors or emotional associations or something. And then there are other projects that I would say fall more into the experiment category, where I have a need to do an experiment to be able to test a hypothesis. Then there are certain projects that are just about measurement, where it's really just about trying to get great measurements that are objective and accurate for different types of customer attitudes and behaviors. How widely does this source of pain exist in this target market? What percent of people in this geography have this sort of profile, etc. So a lot of projects are just about measurement. And then there are projects that are about prediction, where we're actually trying to predict future behavior. This is very common for people who do consumer research. There are a lot of situations where you're trying to really model likely future behaviors, like repeat purchases, likelihood to renew, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm positing with this model, and I hope everybody finds this useful, is that when we are at that moment when we're getting the business question from a client, that we take a pause and we look at, okay, look at what that question is, look at what that business need is, and objectively, should this be a discovery, an experiment, a measurement project, or a prediction project? Because depending on which of those categories apply, and maybe more than one category applies to a specific question, you can see that's the case in many of the rows here that I have, many of the columns I have here, then use that to decide what methodologies really should be in the consideration set. And so what you'll notice then is that there's a gray bar in the framework where I repeat the discover, experiment, measure, and predict categories with examples of specific options that, honestly we have available to do any of these types of studies. And this isn't even exhaustive. If you get the PDF from the link that I've shared, you'll see that there's a whole like 3 paragraphs describing how to use this table. But the short story is that these are just 5 most common ones that I see by each of these categories of projects. So it's a good way to just sort of say, hey, you know what, if it is an experiment, if this is a business need that really does require us to do some sort of experiment, what are our options? And if you're doing experiments related to consumer behaviors and attitudes, then your options may include biometrics, facial analysis, in-store or virtual store experiments, online or e-commerce experiments, and of course survey-based experiments. So there are a lot of different ways we can do experiments these days. So by really taking that step back and saying, okay, what's the, if it's a discover, experiment, measure, or predict, then that's an opportunity for me to try to be really data agnostic and make sure that I am indeed going to recommend the right thing. And again, those lists aren't even exhaustive. There are many other methodologies. I just gave you sort of my top 5 per category. Okay, so please, I encourage people to give me feedback on the framework. If you think that there's an opportunity to collaborate on this or improve it, I am all ears. I hope it's a good conversation starter also for folks. We've been using it now in a few of our classes here at Research Rockstar, and people seem to enjoy it. So I welcome feedback, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me, my contact information is right here. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.